Hi, and welcome everyone to another edition of Visions of Good Education. I am really excited today to be joined by the CEO and founder of SOLcademy, Beau Mccoy. So Beau, let's welcome and thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brad. Thanks for having me. Let's talk about visions of the future. I love the name and the concept of the podcast. I'm really excited.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's start with you. Let's start about your background. Tell us about your background in K-12 education, including like as a student, and then sort of how that experience led you to starting SOLcademy.
Absolutely. So thank you. My name is Beau Mccoy. I'm the CEO of SOLcademy. And I grew up in a very integrated town in suburban New York. It was integrated both along racial lines and class lines. And I just thought everyone had the same opportunity, no matter what your background was. It wasn't until I went to an Ivy League school that I saw there were very few people who looked like me, who were black and brown. And it was bizarre. I didn't get it. I didn't think too much of it. I graduated with a degree in computer science and went on to work in tech in software companies. And again, there was a massive underrepresentation. I thought this was very odd. I kind of fell into working in education in 2014 at an early company called GoGuardian, where we grew very fast and we were working with actually millions of students who were using Chromebooks all around the United States. And this is when I learned about, number one, how what I did every day could impact some student's life, and absolutely fell in love with education. But number two, how my background and thinking things were, equitable was the opposite of reality. And so I just absolutely I was loving working and talking with teachers, spoke with hundreds, maybe even thousands of teachers. And then in 2020, I was working independently with a number of school districts in southern Los Angeles, in areas that were almost entirely black and brown. And when remote learning happened, the learning gap was almost infinity, right? Because they were really underserved. I mean, they were doing very little to no learning at all. But meanwhile, where I was living in Santa Monica, which is like a higher socioeconomic area, these students were thriving because of the advancements in making technology to have their day be more efficient. They were getting so much more out of their time. So just 10 miles away from each other on the 10 freeway, it was like night and day what was happening. I said, there's got to be something that I can do about this. And I was working with a high school. I'll never forget this moment. And I was in a science class, and every student was on their phone while the teacher was talking. And I said, is this normal? He says, yes, this is what they do all the time. So students are spending between 9 to 15 hours every single day streaming media and playing games. So a great way to reach these underserved students is to take what they love to do, which is watch videos, and merge their education with it. So that's how I came up with the concept for SOLcademy. Why don't we take amazing BIPOC teachers all over the country, have them make short format videos, and deliver them to the students who aren't getting the quality of the education they need from where they are, right? And we can make an equitable environment for everyone. Now, we set out with that as the mindset, but what I learned was teachers want to learn from other teachers just as much as students want to learn from from teachers. So now it's the ability for teachers to collaborate with each other and making content, professional development, not only for the students, but also for the teachers. So that's the platform that we have. And then in speaking with, various schools and superintendents, it's not just the BIPOC students who want to learn from the BIPOC teachers, it's all students, because we all have this common thread. We need to learn from each other and be embraced by different people of different backgrounds. And that's what I really set out to do, to create equality across all lines by making short format videos, which the students already love.
Yeah, that's great. And we're gonna dig even deeper into that that notion of equity, especially some of the issues we came to light during COVID. I guess diving in, one of the many things that the pandemic has done is shine a very bright light onto the disparities between the more affluent schools and those that have far fewer resources, as you alluded to. In that same vein, it illustrated political, social, economic, and racial inequities that exist in public education. Can you talk about your thoughts on what we might do about that? And then maybe expand a little bit more on how you see SOLcademy helping in that cause, like in a very specific way.
Yeah, so after I became acutely aware of this problem, I put a poll up on my LinkedIn, and I have several thousand contacts, and I just asked, how many of you, people who I've worked with, or who know me professionally, have ever had a Black teacher? Brad, less than 50% of my contacts ever had one Black teacher, right? So we have a massive representation problem.
Mm-hmm.
African Americans make up 15% of the population, but only 7% of the teachers, and only 2% of the teachers are African American males. We simply have a visibility problem the way that I see it. Because if you saw what I saw, there are amazing Black teachers, there are amazing Hispanic teachers, there are amazing Native American teachers all over the country, but they only visible to the people who are in their classroom in that moment. You might be in the classroom next door and not know that there's an amazing BIPOC teacher right there. And so I think we just have a visibility problem. And I think that if there were more exposure to different cultures and, more importantly, different types of ways of thinking, then there would be a lot less friction in between groups of people. Right. I think when you get familiar and you see a model of success, if you could have a role model who's from a different culture of you, all of a sudden you might open your mind to the way that that culture is, and, you know, maybe bring it into part of your culture. Because in America, it really should be much more of a melting pot. It really shouldn't be so much, you know, isolation, because we're just one country at the end of the day. And that's really where I think, you know, SOLcademy can help out, is that we can provide you immediate diversity. Right? If you go on the site and you want to learn math from an African-American teacher, or you want to learn about wellness from a Latinx American teacher, you can do that. And we have, like, it's right there, and it's available and it's accessible in seconds. So we just got to take the magic that's happening in these silos and open it up to a wider audience. And that's what we're doing. It's all about collaboration. Collaboration is the way that we're going to address all these societal problems and also the learning slides that we're seeing. We can't do it by ourselves. We've got to start pulling together. And that's what SOLcademy serves to be, the hub of teacher-generated content for collaboration.
Yeah, you know, and honestly, this is a little popped in my brain, is also with recruitment. Like, that's a major issue, right? I mean, we just, you know, I'm in teacher education, so even trying to recruit students of color that want to be teachers is part of the game. And I think when you're putting those models out there, students of color can then begin to see themselves doing that. So I think that's a really critical piece as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, your identity is shaped around what you see. You know, and if you see a model of success that looks like you, I think greatly the odds increase that you're going to achieve success. President Harris tweeted out how much more likely Black students are to go to college if they have a Black teacher in their education, right? It's like 33% more if they have two Black teachers. So, you know, you've got to be able to see yourself in that person's shoes. And that's why representation is so important for yourself. And also just to understand that everybody can be successful. Like, you don't need to fall into a stereotype, but if that's all you see, then maybe that's what you're going to believe, right? And we need to have different models of success from people of different backgrounds made available to everyone to understand.
That's great. You're so absolutely spot on, and those numbers are astounding, really. So I wanted to dig in a little bit here. I think it's, you know, staying on the sort of the thread of the pandemic, it's really hard to argue that teaching hasn't changed, or learning hasn't changed in K-12 education in so many different ways, particularly as, you know, when we saw teachers being forced to leave the classrooms and then to teach from home, or maybe even in an empty classroom in some instances. That was a major paradigm shift. What a lot of people don't realize is that K-12 teachers most often aren't prepared in their training or in their teacher education experience to teach online. So we're here now. So from your perspective, how have you seen education change for the better now that teachers have had to teach virtually, or not say had to, but now that they are teaching virtually? And what's your vision for what education and how it can look different once the pandemic's over? There's a real opportunity here.
Absolutely. No, there's a percentage of students, and it depends on which teacher you ask. It's somewhere between 20 and 50 who were not engaged in their education before, who love this concept because maybe they're an introverted and they never feel comfortable raising their hand, or they don't have the right clothes to wear, or any of the societal pressures that you have inside of a school are now no longer there, and they can just be a student. right? They can be a student and not, subject of whatever social pressures are there. So there's a large amount of students who absolutely love remote learning and have no desire to go back because it's really working for them. And the schools should really provide a way for them to continue this indefinitely. Then there's other students who just love being in school. They're social creatures like me, and they can't wait to be back around their friends and with talking to the teacher. And the school needs to account for that. And then I think the majority of students are somewhere in between. They want to do, sometimes they want to be home when they just don't feel like going there. And sometimes they want to be around their friends. And I think that's the thing that we need to really be looking at is flexibility. If I have one word from 2020, it's flexibility. You really need to accommodate different families' needs, right? And sometimes they need to be in school and sometimes they want to be remote, or maybe they got a remote job and they want to move, but they still want to stay with the school and the friends and come to class when they're actually in town, and just provide all those options. And technology is here to make our lives more efficient and more flexible. And that's the beauty of, if you have the ability to do your online learning at the same quality and the same pace as your in-person learning, now you can provide great flexible options to all of your students. And this is already happening. If you look at the University of Phoenix or Grand Canyon University, these online universities, DeVry, that's what they give you. You can take lessons when you want, where you want, whether you're there or remote or whatever, because they've learned to adapt to the needs of their audience. And that's really what I think this is an opportunity to do in K-12 as well. There's no substitute for the relationship between a teacher and a student. I think that's the real beauty of having kids in school, is that a teacher can see that child for who they are, get them to believe in themselves, and find their love of learning. And I don't think that's replaceable in an online form. I truly don't. I know it sounds crazy as a technology person, but that magic exists between human and human. But what we can do is give you a whole bunch of content so that you have options that match each of your students' tastes, right? So that you don't have to spend 10 hours every single week putting together lesson plans and finding content to support those plans. We can allow you to collaborate with your peers to save a lot of time. Now that time is freed up, you can give lessons to your students ahead of time to accelerate their learning, so when they come to class, they've got their hands up and they're engaged. Or if they have a learning slide, if they're not where they would otherwise be, they have a whole library of content to repeat the lessons that they need for remediation. Right? So you have options now. You're not alone in the classroom, as many teachers have expressed that they feel, I've got to do absolutely everything. And that's what technology is here to do. It's here to make you more efficient with your time and more effective with that time.
Yeah, and with time being so finite, especially for teachers, really for everybody, but that's very critical. So I know you've spoken to this in a number of different ways, and I certainly don't want to force you to repeat yourself, but for speaking to specific audiences, for the school administrator, for the teacher, for a student, and even for parents, share why you think, beyond what you've already shared, why SOLcademy benefits them.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the school administrator, number one, you can provide something to your teachers that will save them a bunch of time, right? If you've got 8 teachers in your science department, instead of creating the same content 8 times over, they can pull together and do it once. Then they can actually see the engagement for those lessons, right? You can see which students watched the lesson, how many times they watched it, and you'll make much better use of the class time because the students will already be prepared when they show up for class by getting the instructional piece before. Right? This is that flipped classroom or accelerated classroom model, right? The teacher, now they've got 10 hours, maybe 15 hours per week that they used to spend creating content back. What can they do? They can build that relationship with the student, right? Which is what I think is the most important thing, is understand what's going on in that home. What are the students' needs? What are they excited about? What are they interested in? Where are their passions? How can I really get them motivated to learn more? Because that's the thing. I mean, these kids are so smart. They can go find the content on their own. It's all out there, right? You can Google search whatever you want, but build that intrinsic motivation, that comes from having that relationship with a dynamic with a teacher. And so they can focus more time on that, which I think is most important. For the student, they can get content mixed in with everything that they're doing. So they can jump from their Fortnite to TikTok to YouTube to something educational and do that educational lesson and then go right back to Fortnite or whatever it was that they want. They don't have to disrupt their workflow. We all know about the eye roll when it's time to do something educational, right? Why is that? Because they've got to stop doing what they're doing and go do something completely different. They got to break this stream that they're enjoying, and they don't need to do that anymore. They can just continue it right on. And also they can feel confident when they show up for that class, most importantly, right? A lot of times they're staying up to 3, 4 in the morning on the phone, right? Especially high school kids. They're staying up all night doing stuff. In that time, instead of just waking up at 7 a.m. going, oh no, I've got to go to school and I'm like totally unprepared and then trying to like hide all day, they can actually get the learning in so that they like, okay, I did this. So when I show up for school, I'm ready. And then for parents, we are connecting you to what teachers are doing. So you can see the same instruction that your students are getting, and you can get resources to help you help your child. I think the biggest gain in education is now parents are so actively engaged in their child's education, much more than they were before the pandemic, both with time and treasure. They're willing to invest in their child's education. So there's opportunities to create resources for parents who want to help their child with math or reading or language or whatever it is. So I think it's just, so much opportunity exists today that didn't exist 365 days ago.
No, and it's really, it really is exciting. Honestly, with every awful thing that happens, there's usually a bunch of really good stuff that comes out of it. So I think you really capture that very well. Another sidebar I've been meaning to bring up is, I don't know how well you know the research, but you are spot on the importance of the relationship of the teacher. The research indicates that that relationship and the quality of the teacher is the number one indicator of how successful a child's going to be. It's huge. So yeah, I just love that component of it as well, and how SOLcademy can really support that development of that relationship.
Yeah, because it all comes back to the time, right? So the time that you spend preparing that lesson, teachers are staying up late preparing lessons, the time that you spend in class doing discipline and doing instruction, we can give you all those hours back per week. There's only so many waking hours that you have per week. I don't know what the number is. Let's say it's 100. If you're spending 30 of those hours just like preparing your instruction and delivering that instruction, we can give you all that time back so you could focus that time on building relationships. Because the biggest indicator of the success of a relationship is proximity. If you think about the people who are closest to you, they're people who you grew up with, who you went to school with, who you went through some experience with, who you went to a class with, who you worked with, because you spent a lot of time with them and you got to learn all about them, because we all have multifaceted personalities, and you're never going to like everything about somebody, but you learn that you like more about them than not, and you want to keep this person in your life. And that only comes with time. That's why it's so important that we give teachers the time to nurture those relationships.
It's huge, and it's such a precious commodity for teachers. So let's sort of talk vision. Where do you want to go with SOLcademy? Like what when you think of like your utopian vision for this undertaking, what does that look like?
So every day, whenever you click the send button, you are giving your most valuable asset away to companies like Google and Microsoft and Facebook. And this is your data and what you're doing. It's super, super valuable. Every Fortune 500 company is running off of the data. They're looking at what their audience is doing and using that to make every decision in their business. And this is how I think schools should also operate. We should be able to learn from students the same way that TikTok is learning from them to show them more videos and show them ads. We should be able to learn from them and say, hey, you're actually really good at math. Hey, have you ever thought about being a chemical engineer? Hey, have you ever thought being a professional singer? Here's a professional singer who looks just like you. It's from your same background. And so we can learn from the students to like show what their interests are and what their affinities are the same way that you go on Amazon and you shop for different things, right? It shouldn't be just used for commercial purposes. Imagine a teacher being able to start the school year with 150 individual reports on every single one of their students' preferences and areas of support. That's the kind of insight that we'll be able to deliver. Imagine a school being able to forecast a year in advance where they're having deficiencies on upcoming assessments. So they can identify that, hey, we really need to beef up our math department because our math indicators are showing that our students are not where they should be, right? And so they can start the hiring process, the training process, professional development processes way in advance of seeing the assessment results. We want to help education be forward-looking, and that comes from having reliable and accurate data to make decisions off of. That's really the future. And the second thing is we want a hyper-personalized experience for every student. We should be able to tell you if you wake up at 7:45 or if you wake up at 7:55, what's the right activity for you to start your day? Maybe you should start learning right away, or maybe we should just have something, let you listen to some music and calm down for a little bit before we start the learning. And we'll be able to understand those sorts of personalizations by looking at the student behavior over time and really make a learning program that works for them. Some days we get up in the morning, we want to start working right away. Some days we'd rather not do it to the afternoon. And we can actually discern that from the activity that they're displaying by consuming all this content and interacting with their teachers. And that's where we're headed. I'm really, really excited to get there.
That's really exciting because, and historically, education has lagged far behind in technology. So to think of them as now even possibly being a leader is just, that's right. It's where learning happens is kind of where we should be leaders, right? So I think that that's just so incredibly exciting when I think about the possibilities of what you're doing. It's very cool.
Thanks. Yeah, students are spending so much time in school, right? They're generating the most activity there. So that's where the most learning could happen. And I think it's a real shame that the only ones collecting this data and making any use of it are TikTok and YouTube, and Amazon, and they're selling you stuff. Like, it's time that we use that data for the right purposes, right? That we use it to help these children, get engaged in school and find the right teacher to build a relationship with, and get on their journey, right? Learn to love learning and get on their path for success.
It could transcend society as we know it. So I just think that that's so huge. So I just absolutely love what you're doing. So let's, as we sort of close out here, I'm gonna play around thought game a little bit. So let's just pretend I got a magic wand, and when I wave it, you are going to get to be in charge of K-12 education for an entire week. You can do whatever you want. What do you do to improve schools?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing is I go against what the president said about standardized testing. I eliminate that immediately. And I just say we're now going to treat students as individuals. We will do assessments, but we will use them to understand your needs and where you are, right? I believe in continuous assessment. I think you should be assessed all the time, like you take your temperature before you go into any building nowadays, right? You have to, because you have to see, what your body temperature is. It's the same thing. So we should understand where you are on a continuous basis. And then we should build a system that's going to provide what you need in that exact moment. So project-based learning, personalized learning. We're going to understand every student and put them on that plan. But most importantly, I think we're going to make a huge push for valuing the human being, not the student. So we're going to start looking at the mental health side. How are you feeling? What have you been through the last 12 months? How can we get you into a mental state where you can best accomplish the learning plan that we now have for you, right? That's the most important thing. We've got to really understand the human that is behind the student and look at them as that special individual that they are. So I would put mega resources into social and emotional learning, mental and behavioral health, make sure there's plenty of counselors, make sure there's plenty of therapists, because we've all been through a very traumatic experience. Right? I just read about it in the New York Times about the indicators are off the charts for everything. And it makes perfect sense when you think about what we've been through. So we've got to take the time, do the healing, individualize, and then put each student on their own journey of success and be confident that they're going to come out way more happier and believing in themselves. And that's what school is really set out to do. I don't think it should be just pump you full of information and just move you through the system. It really should be make you feel good about yourself, teach you how to connect with others, and set you up to be successful in life's journey. And I think that could happen immediately. It just takes the mindset of the school leadership to say, okay, we're going to move away from that and really take this as a break point, because everyone's been through this traumatic experience, and we're going to focus on the human beings and not just the statistics. And it could happen as fast as that. I believe this. I truly believe this will happen in the next 2 years, with or without that magic wand.
I think you're right too. Yeah, instead of putting lip service to whole student education, to really do it, I think we're going to have to. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, Beau, before we go, if people want to hear more, the audience wants to hear more from you or wants to learn more about SOLcademy, where do they go?
Absolutely. So you can follow us on all social platforms at SOLcademy. It's SOLcademy. And the SOL stands for Simple Online Learning. I didn't mention that earlier, but we exist to be age and technically inclusive. A lot of times people are turned off to technology because they think it's going to be too complicated, it's going to waste their time, and they're not going to be able to figure out anyway. Our purpose is to eliminate that mindset. We make it easy for everyone, no matter how young or old you believe yourself to be, no matter if you think you're a tech whiz or a novice. This is the site for you. Trust me, as soon as you see it, and it's live. You can go to solcademy.com. Click sign in at the top, create your account, and see the amazing content that we have from over 50 teachers already from all over around the United States, who are primarily Black, brown, and indigenous, and it's available, it's ready to use, and you can get started. And I love speaking with teachers, so don't be shy, contact me. I'm more than thrilled to answer any questions, and most importantly, help you get over that fear of being on camera, because everyone feels it. When you first start making videos and recording yourself, it's very scary to hear yourself and see yourself, but guess what? The students need you more than that fear. Right? Like helping the 3 million students, which I just saw, over 3 million students had zero education in the last year in the United States, 3 million. Okay. Those 3 million students need you to press record and put your videos onto a site like SOLcademy. So you got to get through that fear, push through it. I'll help you and make this available, make your amazing teaching available for the world to see.
That's awesome. Beau, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. It was a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. It's been a pleasure.
All right. And that's all for our latest edition of Visions of Good Education. We will look forward to having many more rich discussions with brilliant people like Beau Mccoy. Everyone have a good night.